Hi, Christopher. Can you please introduce yourself a little?
Yeah, sure.
So
Hi, I'm Christopher Gomez. I'm partner at Leoni Hill Capital in Singapore. We're a late-stage fund. We invest in solutions that solve really, really complex problems. That's how I always put it. My main focus is in space tech, agri-tech, energy, and complex AI. I also look at genomics once in a while whenever I get a chance to. And I will be leading a new fund under Leoni Hill Capital that focuses on early stage companies. That's essentially what I do.
That's awesome. So I'm pretty sure founders like me trouble you a lot over emails, over LinkedIn.
No, not really. Actually, they don't. I prefer founders to approach me when they have a referral. So someone has referred them to me. So that means I'm aware of it. So that I can check. When founders approach me directly, I'm just not, I don't take them too seriously. That means they don't respect the fact that I have my time and I have space and I have my mental space. I want to keep my time and my mental space available for people that I've started building a relationship with, right? People who start immediately do cold approach. I generally don't. It takes time for me to want to keep talking to them.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Would you like to mention one of the portfolio companies of where you work? Like, is it something?
Some of the companies that we've invested. Some of the companies we've invested in. SpaceX, Moderna. So Moderna is a really big deal right now because of the pandemic. So people don't. So these are some of the companies that we've invested in. Yeah. Sorry.
The vaccine making company, right? Like
yes, the vaccine. The mRNA vaccine. Yeah.
Makes sense. That's awesome.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate. We've been blessed. Life has been very good to us. We've had success in investing some of the better companies around the world. I think something like 6 out of the 10 most successful technology companies in the world, profitable companies in the world. I think we've had a hand in them, and I believe you probably would have used 3 or 4 of them today alone. 2 or 3 or 4 of their services already this today. So for the kind of success that we've achieved at Leoni Hill Capital, I think we're quite blessed, and we're very, very thankful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and we want to keep doing that. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's Christopher for you.
What are we talking today?
We had thought about a lot of topics. Let's start with general AI first, and then how that affects the startups ecosystem, which we are going to see ahead, like the future of startups in a way, on how AI can be utilized or how they are thinking to utilize or what our observations are. And then after that, we can jump to how we can utilize technology with AI, even for a kiosk vendor. How can we get to a point where the tech and AI is as simple as it can be used by a kiosk vendor?
Okay.
So we can go ahead like that.
Okay, sounds good.
So, Christopher, what's your take on AI being called a buzzword? That's the first question to start with.
AI is a very general term, right? I mean, it just means artificial intelligence. It doesn't mean anything else. It's just a general term to encompass a lot of things, right? It just basically means at some point machines are going to be intelligent enough to be as intelligent as human being, or maybe more. Very likely they will be more intelligent than human beings. But how are they going to be intelligent, and in what capacity, in what area of our life they're going to be more intelligent and therefore using that intelligence in this world? That's left to be seen. There are probably some scenarios that people can draw out and actually predict. But predictions are just predictions. They don't really go anywhere, and most predictions don't come true. And that's a challenge that we all face in many industries. People will predict something, and it usually doesn't happen, or not so much that it usually doesn't happen. It doesn't happen quite the way it was first,
Thought
envisioned.
about.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Because
So AI is a lot of things, right? You've got machine learning, you've got deep learning, you've got all the other different forms of new technology that's coming up within that field, and AI is just this catch-all phrase that just where everything just falls under, so to speak.
so like the only way I could think about make this interesting, because in a way this is general, like this is our opinion or our understanding about AI, who have been working in or around AI, and they know how it is. But for some people who don't have a grasp on how AI works or how AI should be used or can be used to better their lives, for them, an analogy to give could be, let's say, what is a better AI? A lift module or a gas station counter?
Lift module or gas station counter?
Yes.
The
Like
gas station counter that is a manual gas station counter, or
the electronic gas station counter, like it could be a EV charger or it could be a petrol pump gas station. I'm just talking about the system on the thing which counts how much energy you've utilized or how much gas you've utilized.
um
Because these
well,
are
that's
the most initial implementations of AI, right?
but that's the thing. People assume that AI is supposed to be something that automates everything in their life, but that's not really going to happen. You're actually not going to see everything being automated now. In the future, that might happen, but that's not going to happen now and for the next 5 years. We'll see small parts of our industry being automated and going down that path, right? And that small areas, the small parts, segments of our industry that get automated, they will have a significant impact on the economy, significant impact on socioeconomics. So we just need to be ready about for those things. But generally, a lot of the AI we see today, it's kind of already in a lot of the technology that we use. It's just not quite AI. It's just really, really intelligent programming code. That's really what it is. It's just really well executed code that gives you the impression that you're experiencing some kind of artificial intelligence. The real artificial intelligence is actually what's being developed in the people in universities now, or rather being worked on in the universities now, where they're actually trying to, really teach machines to act on their own. Basically being an autonomous machine that makes decisions based on what it has learned and what it knows. That would be going into the real AI side, and we've already achieved a little bit of that here and there. Not very good, but that's that part of AI, or rather that AI is a real difficult problem to solve, and that's why people are so committed to solving.
So, like the podcast which we had last season, it was called Artificial General Intelligence Inception, and my co-host on that was Alberto. So we had a similar discussion on something like this, where the thought process was, instead of having like there's an input node and there's an output node, right? For any basic program to run, There is an input node and output node. So in that, like input nodes could have databases, and in the output node, we would process that information using one word. So the actions the program or the actions the AI takes would be processed or pillared to one word commands.
Right.
And that would kind of help with that channeling of thought process we just spoke about. You just told on how it works or how it should be working or what direction people are taking to develop it.
Right.
So, like the first word was compassion, second was why, third was altruism, fourth was reciprocity, and 24 ahead. In the whole point of that was similar, like what happens is, like you said, AI today we experience is a very smart executed code. To simplify it for people who probably don't understand these terminologies, we could say it is, if this happens, then that happens, then that will happen in different loops over and over again for how that program works fundamentally, correct?
Right.
And then that is patched to a very intuitive user interface.
Right.
And that is how we are experiencing AI today, in a way.
Yeah, that is true.
Correct.
And that's how it is.
And this, if we see, we have seen a lot of startups starting to implement this already. Like we getting to see where our Uber driver is. That is one sort of this user interface where we actually know how that guy is going to drive here. Then the food orders we make on Zomato, Swiggy, all those things, right? Like we've come way far ahead, like 10 years back when in school we used to write code or we used to think about technologies. These things weren't possible.
Yeah.
And it is mind-blowing.
That is true. So I think this is where we've come, right? We've now arrived in an era where we're going to be focused a lot on getting all the routine things that we need to get done, the routine tasks in our world. We're trying to get that automated and pushed out of our work loop. So once we have a loop that we work, a circle, and that circle, excuse me, tells us that we do 1, and then we do 2, and then we do 3, and then we do 4. These are all different tasks, but and so on. And in that whole circle, you to go full circle, so to speak, in your work, when you may need about you may have anything, I don't know, maybe 12 tasks or 8 tasks or 25 tasks, I don't know, depending on the work that you do on a daily basis. But parts of the tasks are probably routine, repetitive, and doesn't really require a lot of a very human way of it doesn't really need that much of a human touch, and I don't have a better way to put it.
Like
And
setting calendar meetings.
Sorry?
And having set calendar meetings and having those coordinated both the sides. That is a very
Yeah. Those can be automated to some degree, but there's still some aspects of calendar and setting up meetings that are still quite dependent on the user's input, so it still requires that, like tweaking, changing, and so on. I wouldn't say calendars are AI yet, that's for sure. But the point I was trying to make was we're trying to, if nothing else, we're trying to automate a lot of the tasks that are routine, and we're trying to take it out of that loop. So it'll go into another loop. And that's the loop the AI will work on while we work on our loop. And our loop, the load on our loop gets smaller, it gets lighter. The load gets lighter. So instead of, you say, having you had 20 tasks you had to do throughout the day, you now have, I don't know, 17 tasks, while 3 of the tasks have just moved on to another loop, and that's the AI's loop, and they will be figuring it out how to get it solved because it has the ability to do that. And that loop, combined your loop, makes you a more productive, more effective. And because it saves you a bit more time, it also makes you a little less stressed, which in the end is better because,
Let's just, I'd like to give an example to this. Like we said, calendars aren't a form of AI, but let's say you and me having a conversation.
I don't think they are a form of AI
No,
yet.
that's what.
I'm saying. Yeah.
Like you and me have a conversation. Let's say we decide we're gonna meet at so and so time on Zoom. Picking up from that conversation, and AI sets the meeting, and we both get a calendar invite.
Okay.
That would be an AI, right? In a way, or a very robust code which helps us schedule things.
It's just code. It's just code. It's just code. It's not AI, and it's
smart programming.
It's just really good code. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And you have to give the developers a lot of credit for creating that, because they did a good job if it achieves what it does. Yeah.
Of course it does. Let's move our conversation to the second phase, Christopher, where we speak about how and you work in venture capital. I'm sure you come across a lot of startups and how they implement AI, or we also met in a startup room on Clubhouse. And there probably must be so many founders like me troubling you all along every time. What direction you think the startup industry is taking with respect to implementing AI for better use cases, or rather making it easy to use? Or how can AI disrupt the startup industry?
How how can AI disrupt the startup industry? I think that would actually be AI starts to do everything that human beings do. I mean, that in itself will disrupt everything. But
like
right now the ability to take over routine tasks is very important. Mm-hmm. That I think not many solutions are really out there doing a very good job yet, I think. Because if they were really doing a good job, I would be hearing about that. So the point I'm making is that startups still have an opportunity in actually making a product that solves the routine problem, but at the same time creating it and building it in such a way that it's so good that your immediate reaction to using the product is like, wow, I wish I've always had this, but now that I have this with me, I really like it, and I really like the way it helps speed things up for me, or lighten my workload, or and that's really the kind of reaction you want to have. If you can't create the kind of reaction where people respond with a kind of amazement with your product, then the product isn't really going to go very far.
Like the reactions, like, I used an app, yeah, it's okay. Or yeah, I used an app, yo, this is freaking awesome. Yes. Something like this.
Yeah, it's true. I remember when Uber first came out, people were like, wow, I can now, book a car almost anywhere, and when you look at the app and you book it and then you see the booking come through, you go, wow, it's amazing. But as they started adding features, and then they added the feature, the feature where at different times your price changes and fluctuates, and people go like, wow, these prices are cheaper than the price of a taxi right now. It's amazing. These are the reasons why people talk about it and share it with people, with friends and people they know, because it's such a great experience, right? They're so amazed by it now. And then I remember they added this other feature where you could actually they put this tiny little car. I mean, the feature was a dot or something before, but they added this tiny little car, and this car is when the driver gets assigned to you, and then you can see the car move on the map. It's amazing. When you look at it, you go like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then you can turn off the app for a while, and then you can turn it back on to see how far the driver is from you. And then you go like, oh, okay, he's about 2 minutes away now. Okay, that's good. I mean, these are things that have created that experience that people go, this is amazing. And that is the one that's going to get people talking about it.
And the cherry on the top is Uber comes where you are. You sometimes need not even know the address of where you are. It'll just find the location and it'll come. It's like summoning Zenosama on a button.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's really the case. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep the tech side aside for a bit, because whenever there's a lot of complicated, awesome tech, there is a lot of adaptation to that tech, which is also important, right? Like, in a way, we have the world's best AI, but it's just there sitting on your table doing nothing. It doesn't make sense. Anyone rather. So like the adaptation side has got a lot to do with operation side of the business, the marketing side of the business side of business, if we are talking about using AI in startups. So like what happens generally when there's a cutting edge technology which is coming out for a lot of startups, and implementation, the learning curve, and the gap? So from that angle, what is tough in a way, like where's the problem where there's so many tools which helps you reach everyone in the world, but like my point being is the world is become so big. It is, how do I say this? All the developers and technologists have managed to get that world summarized and shortened in your phone screen. The world is so big and the space is so big. We all have this one common space we all share. That is our screens.
But that isn't really AI, is it? It's just very intelligently bringing many different resources into a phone, so that, because a phone is something most people I think, actually not most people, but many people carry around the world. They have access to it, and because they have access to it, it's something that they a phone is basically something that we have in our pockets. All of us have in our pockets, and having the ability to access services and communication and any other productivity related app in one place, I think that's a good thing, and I think that is something that has really helped a lot of people. And I don't really think that is AI per se, but I don't see that as AI at all, actually. That's just very cleverly bringing a lot of resources into one
technology.
Yes. Yeah.
So like how or where the operations and the business side, or the things which has got nothing to do with technology affect usability of technology in a business or in our day-to-day lives? Like, what do you think about that?
I didn't get the question. Can you just repeat that
So,
again?
like, let's say there's a business which is a cafe. Let's say there's a business which is a restaurant.
Yeah.
Let's say there's a business who's a street vendor serving food. Let's say there's a lemonade stand. Let's say
Yeah.
there's so many different things or aspects of human life which does not involve technology, but technologies kind of become a medium to access those things. And like, how is it, like, see, now 10 years down the line, when now this is a matter of age also, right? There are some things which I just could not ever see. And because probably when I was born, around that time Google was invented. So like, you guys have seen the world before Google and after Google, right? So how is the world changed in ways, and how much difference in productivity you see? I'm sure it has gotten better, but how vast or how many folds?
For me, I know that um, there was a time where I was growing up, there was a time where not many people had mobile phones, and then now most people have. In fact, almost everyone
Mhm.
in here has a mobile phone now. People would have trouble getting information online, and now with Google, you have access to all this rich amount, this huge amount of information. It's content rich. That's what Google has given us, access, a doorway into so much of content and information, and of course, uh, um, I remember there was a point where, well, some cities in the world, for example, you can't book a taxi with the phone. You can't even make a phone call to book a phone, but book a taxi. But there are some cities that the taxi companies have adopted technology, and they've allowed you to now pick up a phone and book a taxi. For them to send a taxi to your home to pick you up, and that has progressed into an app on the phone now that allows you to just key in your location and book a taxi, and that's it. You're set. Um, it all depends on the community you're serving and so on, but generally, most communities, you've seen the impact of technology and how technology has actually come and made that change from not having something to now having something. Not where one thing was very inconvenient and now it's convenient. It used to be not very convenient booking a taxi, for example. Now it is. It used to be inconvenient ordering food and getting it delivered to you. Now it's very convenient. It's so convenient to the point now it's becoming it's going down not a very good path. It's affecting restaurants, and it's affecting margins in restaurants and F&B outlets and stuff. We've also had my favorite, to me, has not been the food ordering or the booking of taxi. My favorite has been my ability to actually search for a book that I want in the library and book it, and then go over to pick it up, And of course, the library also has digital books, which you can also borrow and download. So that is actually my personal favorite. I really, really love that. I've used that for, I don't know, I've used it for more than 10 years, 10, 15 years now. And it's a real convenience for me.
For the, how do I say this? Okay, would you say people generally have gotten smarter because of more access to information in the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years or so? Just because
Just because?
just because there is access to information on your fingertips, then to having to go to a library and having to going through all the references if you want to learn something.
Yeah, if you're talking about smart in terms of getting information and
street smartness, like implementing the resources you have well, or using them well in a way.
Yeah, if you're talking about smart from perspective of getting the information in books and reading and knowing what to say and having a smart response to everything, yeah, sure, people have been smarter that way. Have they been smart enough to really execute a lot of these things? Still not really there yet. I think as human beings, we still lack in the execution part. We're still arguing about politics. We're still arguing about racism. We're still arguing about all kinds of other prejudices. There are all these things that we've not rectified it. But here's the funny thing: we're smarter, aren't we? With more books, with access to digital library. We literally sit in front of Google every day. We've got access to all these things, but we still have a lot of kids dying out of hunger. We still have tremendous prejudice towards color, prejudice towards women, prejudice towards sexual orientation, prejudice, prejudice towards class, the class that you're in. Basically, all this is kind of different kinds of classes, right? Whether you're dark or you're not dark, whether you're rich or you're not rich, whether you have this job or not. They're all kind of class. They're all classifications. And if you think about it, you break it down, they're all class, right? So we have all that. And it's interesting. At some point, and in fact now, I'm going to correct myself. In fact, now, there is the class between those who have information and don't have information. Those who have access to Google or don't have access to Google, right? And I have sat in many pitch meetings where startups, this has happened many times, startups will pitch something and I'm listening to the pitch and I'm listening to what they're trying to solve and what they're trying to solve. But when I listen to why they're trying to solve it, I begin to see that they're just going to feed into the same problem again. And that is the problem of, it's okay, I am going to solve the problem where you're going to wake up in the morning and your coffee is ready automatically. You're going to make this fantastic device. It's an AI device. Actually, it's actually almost like a robot, but it's really intelligent. You just got to teach it your preferences. It will actually wake up before you, right? It'll unplug itself from the charging socket. It'll roll towards a coffee machine. It goes to the coffee machine, makes the espresso at the right temperature, the right kind of setting that you want it to be, and then brings it to you at the right. And as it's making that espresso for you, it wakes you up. It wakes you up so that when the espresso reaches you next to you at the bed, the espresso is just right. You get to enjoy the espresso at the right temperature with the right flavor, blah, 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 all that. And all that is great. Here's the interesting thing. And by the way, that device, by the way, does a lot more things. Like, for example, once you're done with the espresso, you get to put it down. The robot walks away, and it's a general AI thing. It gets to walk away, and then you get to go to the bathroom. And as you're having a shower, as you're getting ready for work, that AI, that robot has gone around, done like 2 other things at home. It's cleaned half of your house. Is done. So that's amazing. That's brilliant. And that's solving a lot of problems for a lot of people at an individual level. We're not creating tech that is sensitive enough, or we're not creating a company that's building tech, and the company that we're building is not sensitive enough to think about the associated problems around it. For example, I could have the best robot, the best AI, and the best robot cleaning my house, making me my espresso, making sure that I have enough groceries, and then sending me a notification because that robot actually talks to the fridge. It communicates with the fridge, it interfaces with the fridge, and it has this ability to decide what ingredients and what stuff in the fridge that I'm low on, and tells me what are the ones that I need to get ordered. Right? In fact, better yet, it tells me what I ordered, but it orders it for me. That's brilliant, right? So these are all the fantastic things. These are all the fantastic things that people have talked about this over and over again. People who work in this field can narrate what I just said even better. So I'm not going to take any credit like this is my idea. But I'll tell you this. I hear companies pitch stuff similar to this, not necessarily in the general AI, but any other kind of technology. And it sounds interesting. But they really sound like a bunch of people that are not going to care much about the social politics that is around them, the socioeconomics that's around them. They say things like, we're trying to solve X problem. And by solving X problem, it gives us the solutions of A, B, and C.
But it gets you more 3 problems with it.
And the A, B, and C that it solves actually contributes to a betterment, better quality of life, etc., all that stuff. But I still don't see where people who are born with different levels of education get access to that technology. People of a certain income bracket, right? Yeah, certain income earning capacity are not able to access the technology. That's the thing that I'm really looking at, which is one of the reasons why infrastructure is a very interesting area to always look at. People who are investing in infrastructure, I'm always interested in, because infrastructure generally is out there for people to benefit from, right? And after a piece of infrastructure has been built, that's about it. Right? It's there now for others to build on top of it. So when somebody builds roads and highways, it's for people to basically, use their bicycle, use their car, use their motorcycle and stuff. That's allowing many different people with many different income levels to use the road, to use the highway, right? People with cars, bicycles, people can afford cars, motorcycles, and bicycles. I'm being a bit. I'm just generalizing it. It's not entirely true.
Yeah, you can afford to rent an Uber for a journey. You need not buy a car. I get it. What you're trying to say.
But in the third world, in the developing nations, right? I don't think the term "third world" is being used anymore. But
that will be socio-politically wrong.
Yeah, in the developing nations, you find that a lot of people use bicycles. A lot of people use motorcycles. That's because it is tied to affordability. So a road system allows a wealthy man with a car and a not so wealthy man with a motorcycle and a not so wealthy man with a bicycle to still use the road to get from one point to another. Now you'd argue and say, yeah, but the wealthy guy gets to get there faster. Yes, true.
I would how do I say this? It's ironic and funny. The guy with a bike or a scooter would get from point A to B faster than the guy with a very expensive car. Just because cars will get stuck in traffic and two-wheelers move quick.
Exactly. And that is very true. Like, for example, I was in Vietnam for a while. I lived in Vietnam for a short while and it was a great experience. And I really loved the country. And it's so interesting to see that people on motorcycles would get to a point faster, right? Now I just use Uber. But my Uber would still be slower. It would be slower than the motorcycle.
It's a factor of convenience also, right? Like if you're in an Uber, you can take a call, you can have a phone meeting and whatnot while you're traveling from point A to B.
Yeah.
But if you're riding,
I think there was one time I think you called me and I was in an Uber. and we will actually have, so exactly, you're right. I was able to do it. I can't do that on a motorcycle though. I can do it in a car, but I can't use it. I can do that on the phone on a motorcycle. I absolutely can't.
So that's the factor of convenience.
Right. So someone is now going to figure out a way to make a helmet with an inbuilt thing, with whatever, with a speaker and a microphone. I know there are stuff like that already, really expensive, but someone is going to figure that out, and it's going to allow people to do that on a motorcycle, which may be great. But here's the interesting thing. There are also studies out there, which I can't quote right now, but there are some studies out there that actually show that you do get distracted when you're on the phone, right? So a company that solves that problem, that is so important, is so attractive. It is so attractive, especially to people who have a certain income earning capacity. They're thinking that, okay, this is how much I make. I can only buy a motorcycle, and I can buy a motorcycle with a helmet. But I think I can squeeze out a little bit more and buy that really new, amazing helmet that's made by this startup, and that allows me to get all my calls straight into it. I'll feel like I'm like
everything, noise cancellation, everything.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we need, right? Noise cancellation while we are riding a motorcycle, just so that we'll be a fantastic target for death statistics at the end of the day. Not being able to hear your environment. That's the last thing we need when we're riding a motorcycle. We need to be aware of our environment. And I don't
noise
really
cancellation in other way. I mean, with respect to
there's also there's also noise cancellation that also allows sound to go through, but it's still not very good. So people always choose to just use the full noise cancellation, and when they do that, they put themselves at risk. Of course, the manufacturer and the maker, the creator of that helmet, will say, "That's your choice. You kind of have to decide." But there's a funny part about this that we're not really looking. When we make something and we put it out there, and it's a choice, we also have a responsibility to realize that we put it out there and we made it a choice, right? And without this going into one of those guns good or bad discussion, right? Because this is not a gun discussion at all, and I don't want to get that at all. The issue that we're having here is when we put tools out there, are we also factoring in the downsides that may occur when somebody actually decides to use your product? Because you can't expect the person who didn't do the research, who didn't put in the amazing amount of engineering into making that product, years of putting all that into that product, the person who didn't do that, you can't expect them to decide what are the pitfalls, the potential pitfalls. In fact, here's the interesting thing. They would find out it's a pitfall after they're experiencing it. And if the experience comes through the form of physical injury or death, I don't really think
that's not worth it.
I want to make a product like that. To some degree, you're going to have to let these mistakes happen, because that's the natural cycle of life. Actually, we will make things, and there's going to be death. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be people losing their lives.
So, like,
probably not
the helmet
probably
example.
Not from using the hand. Probably not from using the hand. I want to come back to the infrastructure part, though. The reason why I use infrastructure is because it allows the wealthy, the person who's wealthy, to use a car and get from point A to point B, and it allows the person who's using the motorcycle to get from point A to point B, and allows the person with the bicycle get from point A to point B. The thing is, of course, the car would get there faster generally, or the motorcycle would get there faster. And so you'd say, yeah, but what about the guy with the bicycle? True. So we have to figure out other things. For example, the person with the car can go much further, which means the person with the car will have access to work opportunities, job opportunities much further away from where he lives. So he could go he could probably travel 150 kilometers. That's pretty far, actually. 150 kilometers and 120, 150 kilometers to get to work. The person on the motorcycle may be able to do that, but probably they'll go up 80 to 100 kilometers, right? Maybe they can go all the way to 120 kilometers, like the person in the car, but the person in the bicycle will probably at a max of, I don't know, 40, 50
10
kilometers.
kilometers, 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers
Yeah,
tops.
yeah, thereabouts, right? So your radius of opportunity is smaller, but the opportunity is there. But because versus not having a bicycle at all and infrastructure in place, right? Now, here's the thing. We also argue that one-sided argument, that is, oh, the rich gets the opportunity to use it more and much longer than those who are not rich. True, but the infrastructure system is also created so that we can get access to food, we can get access to medical supplies, you know? So it also serves people also, well, you know, sending food to the rich person, but it's also sending food to the person who's not rich. We all have a benefit. We all benefit from that infrastructure. It is not an actual one-to-one, that's for sure. It's not a one-to-one. Like, for example, this guy gets X and the guy who's not so rich get X as well. No, it's not. It's not quite like that. But it is definitely better than not having that infrastructure built in place, because then more people are going to suffer. Then we're really not making any change, right?
In a way, but there is so many aspects of this infrastructure which has got nothing to do with all of this. Let's say, like we were talking about helmets a minute back, right? We make the world's best helmet, which can help you have a call on a two-wheeler. But having a call on a two-wheeler, think about it. Let's say that call is where I'm having an argument with my mom, or let's say someone has told me to do something, or let's say that conversation is something which is just going to irritate me, and I'm riding a scooter. So in those times when we are on a motorcycle and something like this happens and you get distracted, is technology to blame or we are to blame for having taken that call?
Realizing that this technology has an ability to distract, we should be blamed in the sense for taking the call. But the fact that the technology is only able to do that, that technology should not be incorporated into. I'm not saying let's remove telecommunications technology. Let's get rid of cell phones. No, I'm saying just don't put it in a helmet.
Let's use our brains where, let's say, we are putting it in a helmet. Use it for directions. Use it for Google Maps. Use it for getting from one place to another. Factor of convenience. Add to the shopping list.
Then the technology should only be used for maps, not for communicating.
That was one aspect of it. While you're on
then use it in such a way that you don't. No, then create it in such a way that you only use it for directions, for Google Maps, for example, not for taking calls. Here's the thing: when you're driving, when you're riding your bike, you're not allowed to take a call. That means you cannot That means you cannot even take the call.
Let's say
for whatever reason. Yeah. So what happens is if you want to take the call, you have to be at a full stop.
That is something when we have AI scooters or an AI helping you with all these things, can actually there'd be proper implementation to this.
And some point when we are able to do that for motorcycles,
yes.
Yes.
Like, let's say there's a bike helmet, AI bike helmet connected to your phone with Bluetooth and everything, right? You get a call, you're riding a scooter. It'll simply cut the call and say you're riding automatically, just because you're in motion, but you're at a standstill or a full stop.
Right.
That is when you'd at least even get a notification that there was a call.
Right.
So that is where we have to get to, right? With respect to technology ahead, these small nitty-gritties of our human habits.
Oh yeah, of course. That is definitely the case. I definitely agree. I definitely agree with that perspective. You will have to allow the technology to work. You have to build the technology, right? So technology has to get to a point, and then when the technology gets to a certain point, we're able to build it in a way that that is going to be able to support us like the ways that you just said. I am very pro technology, so it's very hard to convince me that technology is bad.
Me too.
I only have an issue with execution. Yeah.
Like I am that guy who would take a call on a scooter also, everything. All the things not to do, I do all those things. I'm one of those idiots. But I understand the responsibility which comes with it also. Like if I'm on a call, I just earphones on, you are not supposed to pull out your phone and speak. Small things where technology helps us make our life convenient and safe.
Yeah, my issue is still the execution, how we execute the, when we build technology, how we execute it. That's the thing that bothers me the most. I'm always looking at it. That's the one I'm always looking at. So here's the interesting thing. When the person pitches the idea to me and then I listen, I'm still thinking, yeah, but are they really building a company that's actually going to solve some of the serious socioeconomic problems? Because every company has a trajectory and you've got to look at the trajectory. I mean, we got to look way ahead. And if you are a growth company, that's going to scale, then we need to look at the trajectory. If you're not building a company like that, then your trajectory is a little different. In fact, your trajectory is very different, actually. But if you're looking to build companies to scale, which is something that I specialize in, then I want to look at the trajectory. Yeah.
And
Leoni Hill Capital, the firm that I'm at, Leoni Hill Capital is very particular about the trajectory in the future, the technologies and the solutions that are being built by a company. So when a company approaches us and tells us that, look, we have this, we would like you to take a look at it, we're concerned about the trajectory. We're concerned about actual socioeconomic benefit, right? Because we believe that socioeconomic benefit is the one that's actually going to help sort out a lot of other problems, and sometimes it'll have more social concerns to it, and sometimes there'll be less social concerns to it. But it's very important to realize that both these, it's not a separate thing for us, right? We are very clear about where we want to support technology for the betterment of the future of this, of the communities that we live in, and we can't solve every problem.
Makes sense.
But we'll take a look at problems that make sense to the kinds of focuses that we have, and we have a few focuses that are very important. And when we know it's going to change, like for example, if it's going to change the country, the technology is going to change the way the country thinks about a particular thing. It changes the way people do things. Yeah, we want to help support that, with the condition that when we look way ahead, we see it's generally a net good, right? That's very important. So this is how I look at it, and I when people approach us at Leoni Hill, that's what we tend to look at. It's very important to us. It's very important.
I'd like to add to it, Christopher, because in a way, a lot of people just don't get this language. So for them to understand, in a way, let's give this an example.
Okay.
Right. Let's say there is a kiosk store vendor. Let's have two timelines in place. One is 20 years back when there was no fintech on phone or internet, and one today. So let's say the kiosk vendor who has a ticket size of 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 15 rupees, 20 rupees sells, like, let's say it's a lemonade stand, and you sell like 100 glasses of lemonade every day for 10 rupees a glass. That's like $1,000. Today, with fintech and everything, you sell those 100 glasses, you get paid for it, you have access to the numbers moving. But 20 years back, when there was no fintech and we were just operating on paper bills, then you had to take every bill, count it always, keep account of how much money there is, take care of that money, try to make sure that paper bill doesn't fly away, something like that. Problems of a kiosk owner. Today, let's say I go to a kiosk, I just pay the guy 10 rupees using a QR code. He has access to it. He can see he literally knows how many bills in digital currency is collected, and he can see how much money he has made. So this helps with the accountability of the store. And that 20 years back, if you see, that business would never get profitable because two of his bills would fly away every 2-3 days or something like that. We don't know what problems, everyday problems are there. So isn't this a good aspect of impact of tech which we have seen? And this just needs awareness.
Awareness how?
Like a lot of people, we are talking about kiosk owners only now, right? So these people, first of all, when they get to buying a phone, they'd buy a 5,000 rupee phone, 10,000 rupee phone, 15,000 rupee phone. Because again, the affordability of tech with respect to what utility you have, that metrics is different. But to that, they get a 10,000 rupee phone. They cannot imagine they can make 10,000 rupees using that phone. It doesn't fall in assets, it falls in liabilities for them. But in a way, if you think, instead of getting a box to keep cash, I understand cash is convenient, but in a digital world and a non-digital world, let's not talk about the hybrid world where there is cash and digital currency both. Then it will be tough for us to differentiate on what pros and cons are. But while implementing in execution, there's always going to be a mix of both, where the pros and cons balance out from both sides for better convenience. But let's just say in a non-digital world where you have to sell 1,000 lemonade glasses every day, and you have to collect $10 rupee bills or 10 bucks bills every time you sell a glass. And in a digital world, you have a phone and a QR code there for someone to come pay through their bank accounts, and you're selling 1,000 glasses. What is more convenient and safe? Because 1,000 glasses would be 1,000 paper bills, which you have to arrange in, like, let's say hundreds or 200s every time, rubber band them and keep. That requires space.
How do you convince the vendor that that's actually a benefit?
That is the problem the tech community is dealing with. And over years, it is a slow growth, but we are seeing a difference, like, let's just say, let's just look at one statistic. The total number of people who used to have access to internet and access to tech, or let's just say an email ID. 10 years down the line, the number of Gmail accounts or the number of emails with respect to today, the number of emails which people use. Like today, getting an email address is like getting a new phone. You get a new phone, you got to have an email address to use it, be it Android, be it iPhone. Because either or you need one email, right? So from that angle, we get to understand how this is growing. We have gotten to 4 billion people using internet, 5 billion people using internet from 7 billion people. But there is that gap also where they're just there. There's an email ID which we don't use. It is just for registration's sake. But we actually don't send emails. That is a big chunk of the population which uses technology. Like whoever is just buying an Android phone, they need an email to have access to that phone. That's why that email is just there. And that is the most of tech utility today with respect to these kiosk vendors and non-trained or not having a usability understanding of tech people?
Well, if there's a way for them to immediately see the money coming in, then I think using a digital payment method wouldn't be a problem.
No, and that change has happened in the last 2 or 3 years. A chai wala also has a QR code and a speaker. Like you go buy a cutting chai for 5 rupees or 8 rupees. You send that 5 rupees or 8 rupees on that QR code. Then that one speaker who says, ₹5 aa gaye bhaiya, which is funny, but it does the job in a way where, let's say there's an accountant sitting there collecting your bills and telling you, "Nahi kya, this guy's paid 5 rupees. Yeah, I've gotten it. I've deposited it into the bank, and that's why you can see it." Like the problem there is, from what I see as a founder, also who's trying to build a software company who's trying to solve these problems, is the user there thinks the money doesn't exist. But the thing is, the user there doesn't realize it is the same cash. If you'd go to the bank, you'd deposit, and you'd see the same number in your bank.
Yeah. So it comes back to my question. It comes back to my question again. How do you convince them that using that is actually better? How do you convince them that?
I don't think anyone.
How do you make them see that they're getting the money immediately?
See, show them.
Show them how. Show them how.
Get them a phone or something like that. I'm pretty sure a lot of companies did that in the past. That's why everyone has a QR code. Like, even if we walk outside today on the street, even a bhajia wala or anyone has a QR code there, just there to accept payments. We've gotten to that point.
So doesn't that mean that people are aware? So it's not an awareness problem then?
But then there is that learning curve, right, Christopher? Think of it in a way. You are habitual to doing something like that for 20 years. And there comes one dangerous, amazing technology in the world, which is going to change the habit of 20 years, 30 years, or let's say 100 years with respect to industry standards we follow, There are some industry practices which have existed for 100, 200 years, which we still follow today. They have been disrupted. But to get our heads around those, not just knowing and awareness, but also in the habit cycle, like our brain has a learning curve in which we have to get those habits registered, right? Let's say people have always learned things before 20 years, 30 years by talking to other people, referring to books, or talking to elders. 20 years, 30 years before Google came, 20 years before, 25 years before Google came, you had access to all those things in common just on a screen where you could talk to people. No, let's just not talk about Google then. Let's go 30, 40 years behind phones or any other technology as our buddy, like access to information, the digital library, which you mentioned, that calling someone to get their help, referring to some online video as a reference to learn from elders also or other people, and having all of this convenient for 24/7, 365 days. Isn't this awesome? But still people are trying to get their heads around if this is possible. What is that one point of differentiation which is mind-blowing to you personally? Over years, like let's say you are 20-year-old in today, and you are 20-year you in really when it was. What is that point of differentiation or the edge today's 20-year-old kids have? or what are those resources your generation is made available for the 20-year-old kids today, which weren't there
It's
before?
it's what I said. It's what I said earlier. I mean, my ability to actually go and borrow a book. I borrow a lot of books, and I like to have the flexibility of searching for the book and then booking it and then going to the library and picking it up without having to search through the library and not finding the book and then feeling not a little disappointed. Yeah.
And
We have a library system here where we can borrow the book at any library and we can drop it off in any library as well. I literally have a library really close by, but I don't go there. I go to the one in the city. I go to the main library in the city, and I go there all the time because I'm just used to it. But I can drop my book off anywhere. Also, they've also made access to digital books, so I get to access the digital books as well. So it's something that you never had to this degree of convenience and ease. You've never had this about 20 years ago.
I want to try to paint a picture for this Pikk. Like if you think about it, 20 years before, when the access or the convenience factor to the digital library and the convenience factor of picking up and dropping the book, that wasn't there. You had to go to library A. You had to go through the index of the library, find the shelf, go look for the book. If you don't find the book in that shelf, you go to library B. You find the book, you go to library C. It takes days of effort. And the differentiator today, a search bar does that for us. Where we have to search where that book is, we at least get to know in which library it is, or we can get to pick it up, or we get a PDF downloaded in the phone. Isn't that mind-blowing?
Yeah, it is. It is mind-blowing. It is the most. My library card is my most valuable card I have in my wallet.
And it brings me back also, like me saying this is kind of ironic for a 24-year-old to say 10 years back I did this is something different. The first business which I had was around school times. It was selling bookmarks. I still have the first time like bookmark from that time even now. So we had
selling bookmarks.
Yes. So there's this one book festival my dad's friend had arranged on around his birthday. There were 300, 400 bookstores on one ground. And there's only one kid and his senior from school, college, selling bookmarks in the corner. And I was that kid. So it was fun. So like, and today, when we are referring, let's just refer to a website as a book with respect to when there are blogs or research websites. And when you're reading something, you bookmark it on a click and keep it there for you to read later. Just bookmarks have changed over years, and it has blown my mind away. Where, let's say, I'm referring to 5 different things in the same book. I had to keep 5 different bookmarks for each page. But today I can have those all 5 different things I'm referring to at the same time on the screen. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, it is.
Like even I find it awesome.
And I get to save as many bookmarks as I want. Yeah, you're right.
And it's fun.
And I can send the bookmarks and I can email the bookmarks to me myself.
And this is kind of just my personal opinion on what the problem is. We are focusing on the problems more than how far we've come with respect to tech and how much it has helped so many people.
Yeah, I mean, there is a large number of people in the population that focus a lot on the problems, and so they are distracted by the problems, so they don't want to see how far they've come. So I guess people forget how to how to feel at ease for a bit when they look at something they've achieved. Google is one of the Google search is one of the biggest achievements
Of humanity. Because
we've all had. We've all had. It has given us access to so many things, and Google led to other people coming into the picture. You've you got Wolfram Alpha, you've got Dogpile, you've got Bing, you've got all these other people that have come in, and they're all around. It was a time when we had Yahoo, we had Alta Vista, we had Ask Jeeves. Virtually all of them are gone. Yahoo is still around, but everyone else is gone. What Google has done has transformed the way we think about accessing information to the point where other companies have come into the picture and they're still around. A lot of these companies are around. Dogpile is around. Bing obviously is still around. They're all still around.
But that's the thing, right? Like Google couldn't have, I mean to say it in a very good way. Google is one of the most differentiators in what has changed our lives as humanity. But
that's true.
But there is a lot of feedback from the users which has helped Google grow. Like if we don't go mark a place on the map, that listing doesn't happen. So it is a very democratized model in a way where I like it, but I don't like it. I don't know why. And I'm not saying me personally. That is the general confusion around Google.
Google is changing. Google is changing. Along the way, they've made some decisions that didn't really sit well with people. And Google is quite responsive. And Google changes.
I don't even want to get
trying
to
make it a little bit better.
Business operations or company aspect of it. I just mean with respect to a search bar and how it is affect a human life. Just that confusion. Like search bar technology, which is awesomely built, that is a different story. Who did it? That is also not in question now because we are way past that. Where how Google started, how and what. Google is there.
Yeah, but like I said, they're as a company, they're changing. So they're building things that are that people will be more comfortable using. So it is, they're always changing. Google is an evolving company, probably more dynamic than a lot of other companies out there. I mean, because a lot of people who work at Google have left. A lot of people who work.
Every single Google user contributes to some tech built at Google.
I didn't get you. Sorry.
So every single Google user contributes to what tech gets built at Google. Isn't that of course. Awesome?
Yeah, but it's the same. Facebook does the same. What else? Who else does the same? A lot of people who do the same thing. I mean, Apple does the same thing.
And
just about every end factor does that.
And that is the awareness about technology and trust around technology we need to focus on. That every single software or tech which is built mostly on user feedback.
Yes. That is definitely true. But I'm also trying to say that when a company isn't able to change quickly, they're going to face a lot of problems. So companies like Google and Apple, they try to change as fast as they can.
The only reason I was trying not to refer to the business aspects of it was just because I did not want to point fingers at any company, any way possible. But I was just talking with respect from a user perspective, where like, let's say someone Googling doesn't really care about if Google is making money or no. Think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
So from that angle, just technology, I freaking love it. Not just Google, internet as whole. Like, how do I say this? I'm a nerd with respect to understanding these things. I like to talk about these things a lot. But there's that one aspect of which feels incomplete even today. And that is what we all, even you, all of us, every single technologist is trying to fill, right? Like that, it's not there yet. And isn't that what helps us grow?
Oh yeah, of course. The sense of realizing that there's something more to be done. There's something more to be built. Yeah, that is going to push us, towards growth. Of course.
What is more likely to happen? Okay. Uh, a group of people having a common robot. Let's say there's an apartment, and the apartment guys have a common robot, or every apartment will have a robot in the next 20 years. And
Yeah, I
let's
think both. I think both. Both will happen. There'll be common ones which are going to be around to sweep and mop the floors, on the outside general areas where people share, common areas that people share, and then you have individual robots as well. That's it. I mean, it's already happening to some degree in Japan. Uh, and there's this hotel that uses a robot that sends your food. And like for example, if you call the front desk and you ask them, could I have say could someone please send me a bottle of water, um, and they'll say yeah, sure, and then a robot will come up and deliver the water to you.
Mhm.
You know,
That'd be
that
nice.
has happened, and it's actually happened, and they've set this up several years ago. But during this pandemic, it has really helped them because it's kept the hotel safe, it's kept the visitors safe. It's pretty good. So common robots will be there and individual robots as well. I mean, you will have your own personal butler as well, robot butler as well.
Eventually, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
And
eventually, because right now costs are still prohibitive. It's not as yeah, it's not as affordable. So it's still a cost issue.
which sector is going to blow our minds? Gaming? No, I'm going to give you three options, of which
Okay,
gaming, cryptos, quantum computing.
I think all three.
The most. Choose one. That's why these are three hot topics.
Quantum computing, because quantum computing will solve the problems for that cryptocurrencies
Mm.
and
And
gaming
gaming.
is yeah.
And it
So
it will be
so
fun
quantum
to
computing
see
and
a
quantum computing
quantum.
will solve problems. Quantum computing will solve problems for a lot of other industries as well.
And one more thing, like
Yeah,
let's say we are in the 1970s, that time when computing was new. They had a dream to put a computer on every person's desk or every person's pockets or bags or whatever. Like
yeah,
that is eventually happened.
yeah.
This took how many years? 70s to 2020 to 50 years, 60 years to get to a point we can call computing being used easily in any form, be it phone,
About 30,
laptops,
well, about
computers.
30, depending, some parts of the world about 30, 35 years, and other parts of the world about 45 years. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Quantum computing
thereabout.
to become like this. What's your guess? Or like, let's just leave with a prediction on this. Quantum computing to become as accessible as normal binary computing today is.
When quantum computing becomes accessible, I think it'll still go through the phases of what computing and computing power when it started to increase and
Hmm.
computing started off in the early phases. It'll be similar as well. Like for example, there'll be time sharing where you would have to log in, get an allocated time, and then use that to process, and then it'll send the output back to you, kind of thing. I mean, there'll be this client server idea, that model, that sort of framework will still be there. I mean, we kind of have it now with cloud computing.
Yeah.
So, that's how it's going to be for at least for several years. When we do when we when we when we when we arrive at the tipping point, it will be that model, the model where we would have to access immense computing capacity on the cloud. Eventually, at some point, maybe 15 years down the line after that, 20 years. So when does it hit the tipping point? I don't know. So let's just say quantum computing, we hit the tipping point in 2030.
Where we have a first prototype of a consumer accessible quantum computing device.
I don't think we'll see it very soon.
2030.
I'm not pessimistic or anything. I just know well enough to say that it won't happen the way people are saying it'll happen. It will still take another 10 to 15 years to get to a point where it will be. So if we hit the tipping point where quantum computing is a real thing for all of us, it'll say if we hit it at 2030, it'll take another 15 years before we'll start seeing it at homes. Why? Because there's a overhead that we still haven't figured out.
Yeah.
So I'm not some dumb futurist that a lot of other people like to pretend they are. I'm not. I'm a guy who actually look and weigh at the technology and then weigh the costs and weigh at all the other jurisdiction considerations. And it helps because I'm not from the United States, so I don't have this issue that is. I'm not bogged down by a lot of these perceptions that people have in the US or even in the West. And excuse me, and honestly, whenever we hit that tipping point, where we now know quantum computing is a real thing, it'll take another about 15 years after that before it'll really be manageable costs for us at home, and it'll take another 5 to 10 years after that before it becomes really affordable. Product. Yeah, so yeah, it'll happen fast. It'll happen fast because 10 to 15 years is not 40 years. That's what I'm saying. It's fast. People think 10 years is too long. No, 10 years is actually very fast. It's very fast. For quantum computing to become mainstream and used at home, 10 to 15 years, that's pretty fast. But when is quantum computing coming? Can't really tell. I mean, there are all predictions out there, but can't really tell. Yeah.
Okay.
Neither can I say when do we achieve singularity? I'm not able to tell.
See, regardless of that, there's this one math which we like when you end up working in technology, there's this one math we see for ourselves, right? Like these are the things needed to be done for quantum computing to be accessible. So is there any math like that? It doesn't have to be a math of numbers.
No, because it involves a lot of things. There's so many things involved that things that we haven't even. Right now, they're just thinking about the computational power, but there'll be other things to be considered. So no, there's never really one single math. There's no such thing. There'll never be such a thing. There'll be so many factors to be considered. That's why it's a very difficult. That is why it's a very difficult problem to solve. People assume it's one thing that we can look at, and no, it's not. It just isn't, right? Otherwise, Google would have solved it a long time ago, right? Or Baidu would have solved it a long time ago. Facebook would have solved it. Nope, it's not. Intel would have solved it a long time ago. No.
Every single big company could have solved it a long time ago.
If that were true. If that were true. Yeah.